Hello everyone, Jesse's back. We're going to do a little bit of a Path of Exile historical look back as the 3.23 patch notes were released. To a lot of fanfare, a lot of praise, a lot of excitement, but as someone like myself who makes videos regularly and routinely centered around balance and around the state of, I guess I would say, the more competitive nature of the game. And comparing and contrasting playstyles and archetypes, weighing them against each other, pros and cons. I care a lot more, actually, about balance changes to the existing content that is already in the game, as opposed to getting excited about something that is going to be added into the game, like a new skill gem or new power creep. That's not to say that I'm not excited for the league. I am, but I just want to temper expectations and take a look back in time really quick. So I decided to go to a wiki page that has a line I'm going to read out loud. Cleave now has +0 radius at gem level 1, unchanged, up to +10 radius at level 20, previously +8. This was kind of an infamous patch notes 3.19 Lake of Kalandra League over a year ago. This was something that people laughed at, roasted, made fun of relentlessly, talking about how melee was borderline unplayable. Skills were not nearly balanced. They were so out of whack and just bad. And people were calling for things like the attack speed getting reverted back to 0, maybe some quality of life things, building in Ancestral Call onto certain gems. There were a lot of ideas getting thrown around, and of course, as always, the ancestor totems being built into the gems themselves, as opposed to being a forced crutch that costs us 3 gem slots. So this was August 19th, 2022. It is now December of 2023. We're a week away from the Affliction launch. So without further ado, we'll talk about the good, the bad, and my expectations for the league based on the patch notes that were released yesterday. So the good is the good from every league. Where there's new content, there's something new to do. And specifically this kind of new content, I actually liked a little more than Toda. I like the idea that there are whole new build archetypes as opposed to just adding player power at the very, very end of the league. This doesn't seem like a direct numerical buff, just giving everyone +1 frenzy charges. This actually seems like something that requires a little more decision making, a little more thought, a little more planning, as opposed to just throwing one projectile onto your tree. And the other good part, ultimatum, I liked the ultimatum mechanic when it was released. I liked it playing during that league, and I think that I will like it in this league. I think it's a very appropriate mechanic. I'm very sad that Metamorph is going by the wayside, but the ultimatum mechanic feels like it's appropriate for the current stage, the current day of Path of Exile. Lots of risk-reward mechanics exist in Path of Exile. I do think that Metamorph had a place, but I understand also why they got rid of it. I kind of wish that they would have reworked it and made it more advanced and complex and nuanced, but it is what it is. And then finally, the last good thing I already mentioned, the new build possibilities. Lots and lots of new ideas to explore. I have barely even cracked the surface on this, but I have gone through all the patch notes, and I can't help but point out a couple of bad things. As always with these videos, I'm only even doing this video because I love the game. I'm not coming from a place of malice. I'm coming from a place of wishing it was better. The first thing I'm going to say here is 0 buffs to the critical parts of melee progression. The truth is that it feels a lot worse to play a melee skill in the first, let's say, 6 to 10 to 15 hours of playtime. Feels a lot worse. Bone Shatter is its own beast. Bone Shatter is probably 2 to 3 to even 4 times more powerful than the next best strike skill, or even the next best skill with a melee tag in the early to mid, even to late league progress. I think that outlier is so extreme that it actually makes GGG more ignorant of the melee problems, because they have one extremely numerically busted melee skill they think that the other skill gems are even remotely comparable when they're not. I wanted to look at a couple gems here real quick. So there's one in particular that I have to mention. So sweep, quality provides radius, right? So you don't get this obviously early on in the league. If you're picking this gem, you're picking to lose. You're going to be behind everybody. You're going to be feeling bad. It's going to take longer to do anything. You're going to do less damage with less clear. And then Tech Slam, ironically, is the very next one. These two skills being right here and receiving 0 numerical changes at all, giving quality that gives Fissure Branching chance doesn't even remotely put Tectonic Slam on the same level of any skill in the entire game, but even any other skill within the archetype. They're both so bad. The clear is worse than bows, and the damage is a lot worse than bows. I don't understand why these skills like this aren't given a proper look. Now, if you go up to something like Ground Slam, you say, okay, Jesse, this is a more multiplier right here. See the more? That's juicy. That's a good thing. That means the skill is probably much better. Maybe it is much better. Maybe it isn't. I don't think any of the core problems have been remotely fixed by anything in the patch notes. I think Bone Shatter has fucked the melee archetype. Bone Shatter was released, I think, in like 3.15 or 16 or something. So it's been, we've had Bone Shatter for a couple of years, I think. And because it has a built-in more multiplier, because it has a not quite as bad attack speed multiplier, because it has built-in flat added physical damage, it is so much better than the alternatives. It is numerically and also within playing. Just by playing on feel, it feels better to play Bone Shatter. I don't understand what angle GGG is approaching this at when they make changes like Fissure fucking Branching chance. So let's look at the gems real quick, because I've done this before. Sweep has a 70% attack speed multiplier. It has 170 to 281 effectiveness of added damage. Bone Shatter. I mean, I feel like I don't know why I even have to do this. Why is someone at GGG not doing this? It doesn't make sense. 200 to 250 base. Okay. And then, wait, looky here. 158 to 238 flat added fizz? Okay, all right, fine. But it gets better. Built-in more multiplier. 4% more damage per trauma? And it has clear? I think GGG, I don't know what kind of napkin math that they are doing that thinks that any of these gems are even like remotely comparable. This gem is so much better than the other ones that it's kind of frustrating. And the only reason I'm frustrated, the only reason is circling back to the cleave radius change. 3.19 was in August of 2022. Nothing has changed in a fucking year. We've had 4 patch notes released. One patch note literally didn't change anything. I don't understand why these skills don't get anything. They get nothing. The early to mid league progression is what I'm focusing on specifically. Bone Shatter. If you're playing Bone Shatter and you're level 55 or so, and you're using one of the Path of Building as released by Ben or by Karn or by one of these people who knows what they're talking about, you probably are going to feel pretty good. You're going to clear pretty fast. You're going to make your way through the campaign pretty fast. Once you get into maps, you're not going to feel like your damage has hit a brick wall. You're going to continue to progress smoothly as your weapon is upgraded, and the Bone Shatter will be able to kill Uber bosses. What has happened to all of the other skill gems that are dead in the fucking water? The power level from F tier to S tier is so vast. It is so vast how huge that gap is. Bone Shatter is S tier, and there are a couple of skill gems that you can maybe claim to be maybe in the B tier area at best. Maybe C tier. Everything else, the red skill gems, holy shit, these are so bad. Like, Sweep, fucking awful. Ice Crash, Earthquake, Ground Slam, sorry. Glacial Hammer, Heavy Strike, Molten Strike, Perforate. I mean, basically all of these skills, unless you play a very, very specific nuanced build, Earth Shatter, Infernal Blow, they're fucking bad. They're bad skill gems. They have bad numbers. They have bad base attack speed. They do bad damage. You don't get a quiver. If you have a two-handed physical melee weapon, you don't get a quiver. You don't have good enough defenses. You don't get a hold of shield. It's a shit playstyle. It's a shit playtype. I'm exhausted by all these patch notes that do nothing for them. When am I going to get 20% quality when I'm level 45 in a map, struggling my way through trying to play Tectonic Slam, in the campaign? Don't worry, if I get 20% quality in my fucking Infernal Cry or whatever, it has better cooldown now. It has better cooldown if you get the quality. But you won't even get fucking GCPs because you're playing a bad build. And you're going to be way behind everyone else because you're playing a bad build. The beginning of the league, the first 2 days of the league, let's even say the first week of the league, if you're an SC trade player, it's the only thing that's relevant. It's like the most critical part. There are people who only play Path of Exile for like 3 weeks max, and then they quit and they go back to WoW, or they go back to whatever the game they usually play. Like they farm or Mage Blood and they quit. Well, those people are playing Tornado Shot Lightning Arrow. Not a single one of those people who plays only for 2 weeks and then quits after they get their Mage Blood, not a single one is playing Tech Slam or Sweep, or frankly, and this is another thing where I don't understand why I have to do this for GGG. Like, you need someone on your balance team who's paying close enough attention to this kind of thing. Tectonic Slam, 0.0. Let's look at Sweep. Sweep, 0.0. I mean, Ground Slam, 0.0. Earthquake, 0.0. These skills are not played. The game is not balanced. What you've done with quality is not balancing the game. What this does is add a little bit of excitement, but there's no balance. Balance is different than new possibilities and new build content. Balance is a different thing. It's very delicate, and it requires way, way more attention being given to that early part of the league, the first 70 levels of your progression. Anyone who gives a half a shit about competing, quote unquote, in the SC trade environment, in the economy, and knows that the first week is very, very important. You have to play a meta build if you give a shit. If you don't give a shit, which I try not to give a shit, you just play a build that you have fun with. And that's like the prevailing idea that I've tried to bring up in my last video. And I will feel bad playing slams knowing that I need to find 20 GCPs or 40 GCPs in the case if I have to put a bunch of quality on my war cries. And I still know, and I'm aware at the 5-hour mark, at the 10-hour mark of my playtime, that I am just way, way behind. Some Tornado Shot Lightning Arrow player, some Deadeye, is getting more kills, more currency, and making more progress through their Atlas than I am. It's frustrating because I don't think GGG, my guess is that there is somebody who plays slams in their balance team. There's someone on staff who actually uses war cries, and they play their slow SSF build. They go Earthquake, bleed Earthquake, and they're chipping their way through the Atlas. It's one map at a time, 8 minutes per map, just cruising. And when someone asks them, hey man, we're thinking about making some balance changes, they don't go to POE Ninja. They don't look at the top end builds. They don't look at the racing builds. They don't look at the gauntlet builds. They're just like, oh, slams feel great, man. Slams are awesome. And they're completely fucking oblivious to all of us who play slams who actually want to play SC trade. I am way, way disappointed. I was disappointed as fuck last league. They did nothing. 3.22. That was a full year since they did anything. The cleave radius changed. There's been no real melee buff since they nerfed Seismic Cry in 3.15 like 2 fucking years ago. The only reason that anyone thinks otherwise is because of Bone Shatter. These gems need numerical, they need numbers changed. They don't need quality. No quality is going to make these gems compare to the bow skills. And a quick comment on bow skills. SSF, Tornado Shot LA, feels better than SSF slams. Okay, so the fact that the Calm Spirit got nerfed, and that was very popular for bow builds. They're still outclassing the melee builds by a huge margin. Mana Forged Arrows and Ballista Totems and Shrapnel Ballista, whatever the hell helps you with your single target, that didn't get nerfed, or I didn't even think it needed to get nerfed. What I thought was going to happen is I thought they were going to buff melee to try to bring them on a level, but instead it's just the same. I didn't even want nerfs to top end builds. What I wanted was the shit builds to get something more. The early to mid league progression, I think, is the most interesting, important, and critical part of the league. There are some people who are build fanatics, and this league probably is very tempting and exciting for them. I'm excited about making new builds myself, but I can't help but be a little salty that the only thing I have to look forward to as a slam player is end game. But for the first week of the league, I don't think anything is changing. The bow meta is unchanged. Flasks meta, that meta is unchanged. Your Mana Forged Arrows, single target DPS being way better than anything melee can do, still unchanged. And they buffed Bone Shatter. Top racing skills and Gauntlet archetypes remain uncontested. This is not a meta shakeup that they think it is. The meta shakeup for week number 3 of the league, it's a meta shakeup. Week number 1, we're all doing the same shit. Okay. Ooh, baby.